Hi, my name is Alex Brotman and I'm a project developer with Allen Construction. I'm here today with company founder Dennis Allen. Dennis, thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course.
We're here today to talk about solar battery storage. Tell me a little bit about how this battery storage system works.
We have what's called a Tesla Powerwall. It's a 13.5 kilowatt hour storage battery. The average house in this country uses about 30 kilowatt hours of electrical power a day. And this Powerwall stores 13.5. So for a typical house, that would be just a little under half of all the power they use in a day. We use probably more than that because we're an all-electric household.
Makes sense.
We do all our cooking and everything with it. So with this, it gives us the capacity to be able to run our home electrically when there's a brownout.
Fantastic. And are there any other benefits besides providing power during a power outage?
Oh, yes, there are a number of benefits, but one of the other one, the typical arrangement is where you have a Powerwall or a battery system. It doesn't have to be the Powerwall, where you have a solar array of electrical production on your roof or on the ground next to your house. When you have that and a battery, you can power your house during a brownout in a way that you can't with just the solar array on your roof, even when it's net metered into the grid. Net metering is where your battery, where your solar panels feed the grid when you're not using power and draw from the grid at nighttime when your solar array is not producing. So most typically a battery is linked to a solar array and the net metering arrangement.
Interesting.
But when you have only the solar array and the net metering, if you get a brownout, the grid shuts down, of course.
Of course.
And your solar array is, by law, forced to shut down so that there can be no feeding from your solar array onto the grid and maybe putting repair workers for the electrical system at risk.
That makes sense. So in that case, the power is wired directly to the wall to
only
provide,
if you have the battery.
Only if you have the battery to provide
So
backup.
The county office of emergency services says, we need to be prepared. Every household in Southern California needs to be prepared for 5 to 7 days of power outage. That's what they're forecasting. It could be even more than that, or it could be less, of course. So that's a lot. So with our solar array and anybody that's linked to the grid, if your power goes out for a few days, you start losing everything in your refrigerator, and you're burning a lot of candles, and et cetera,
Right.
et cetera.
And I assume most folks aren't ready to provide their own power for 5 to 7 days at this point.
Not very many, although it's starting to, the demand is very strong for it now.
I've seen that myself.
And in the last few years, since we had all the wildfires, and even now, if there's not a wildfire, but there's a risk of wildfire, the big utilities shut off.
Right, after what happened a
Yeah.
couple of years ago.
So, it's not just, over demand on the grid that's causing it these days.
Right. So for someone who's interested in getting a battery storage system of some sort, what are some of their options?
So there's a number of factors to consider, but one of the things is if you're wanting to put a solar array on your roof and a battery at the same time, there's what they call a direct current coupled system. And what that means is because the solar panels are run on direct current, and so does the battery, most of the batteries. So with that setup, you can come in and have just one inverter that will change either the power that's produced in the array or the power coming from the battery, shifting it from direct current to alternating current, which is what you need for your house or to feed into the grid.
I see.
So that's kind of a nice setup, and you get by with one inverter in that setup.
So then I'm assuming you have Tesla solar panels on the roof as well.
No, they're not Tesla panels. We've had our array for 11 years, I think.
Oh, okay.
On this building.
Of course.
And so we're not in that situation. Our situation was we already had the array on the roof. We already had an inverter changing it to either feed the grid or our home with alternating current,
right,
which is what you need to run everything in your household. So we got the Tesla Powerwall 2.0, a version that has a second inverter in with the battery.
I understand.
So that any combination of flow of power from either the panels to the grid or our house, or from the panels to the battery, because it comes through the first inverter we have here on the wall, and then it goes into the battery, which has to have it in DC form. So it converts it back into DC, and then if it comes out of there, it's got to be an AC to either feed the grid or our household.
So is that why you selected the Tesla 2.0 Powerwall?
Well, it was one of the ones. It's integrated. The thing that is so marvelous about most of these systems, not just the Tesla one, but is the electronics that control it. So, for example, one of the advantages we get, because we weren't allowed to put enough solar panels on our roof to be 100% of all the power that we needed to run our household. We're in a historic district here, and they didn't want to see them anyplace, so we had to put them inside of a parapet on the roof. And anyway, we're not too far from 100%. I think our annual bill this past year was $143 for the whole year.
Wow.
And we're all an electric household, as I said.
Wow.
So not too bad, but what that means is our bill's going to come down even more now that we have the battery, because California allows time of use billing or rate charging. And so what our battery does for us, and this is all automatically controlled by the software, our battery stores up from our solar panels during the day, and any excess goes onto the grid. But in the evening, from say we're this time of year, 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock in the evening, that's the peak rate time, because that's when the grid has to supply the most power to all the households in Southern California.
Right.
Or anywhere in California, because this is the rates are statewide determined.
Right.
So during that time, our household is drawing power from our battery and not paying those high rates. And then after 10 o'clock or at 2 o'clock in the morning, we draw from the grid to either recharge our battery or anything that we have running, clocks and the refrigerator and stuff like that run all 24 hours.
And the software knows that and controls it automatically for you.
So it only draws from the grid during the cheap rate time.
Understand.
And shuts off our drawing from the grid and lets us use our own on-site power for the expensive times of the rates.
And that probably has the effect of reducing the strain on the grid during those peak times as well, since you don't have to be pulling from them as well, which may lower the rates overall for everybody.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's why the utilities love these batteries, these residential batteries, and does the state of California. We actually are participating in a program right now with a lot of others. I'm not sure I know the number, but I think it's over 1,000 other homes in the northern part of Southern California that have batteries. And so 3 days out of the month, the utility says no storage in our batteries, and let's see how much
it changes.
The change.
I understand.
So this is grouped for all these households, so they start seeing a real impact on what they have to provide or not.
I understand. So while we're on the topic of cost, how much can someone expect to have to pay to get something like this installed in their home?
We ended up paying about $11,000 for this. There's some rebates. There's a federal tax credit that's 22% of all the cost, and that will sunset at the end of 2022. So
Okay.
2 more years, if you're going to do this, is a good time. And that's the same rate that applies to putting solar panels on your roof.
I understand. It's also to end the end of 2022?
Yes. But interestingly, California, who wants to keep incentivizing this kind of stuff, knows that's going to happen. So they have set up a self-generating incentive program, it's called. And that will, I think on average, that's paying about 25% of the cost of doing this. Actually, a little more than what the federal one is right now.
That's great.
And that is not a fixed amount, because it'll be a lot higher for people that live in the high fire areas, because they want to solve this problem of utilities shutting down in high wind and high fire risk periods. And it also, and I'm pretty sure this is right, gives a higher rate for lower income communities or people in those communities.
That's much needed.
So it's a great program, and I don't think it has a sunset date on it, at least I'm not aware of it.
Fantastic.
So California is going to keep plowing ahead down this road, and California has set the date of 2045 to have a totally 100% clean electrical grid. And to get there, they're going to have to rely a lot on battery storage, both grid scale battery storage and residential home battery storage. So this is going to be essential for our getting to that goal. And the city of Santa Barbara has set a goal of 2030 for 100% clean energy.
So how is someone to know what size battery that they need to put in their home?
The thing you need to think about is what you need to get through blackouts. These are fairly expensive. Like I said, this cost us $11,000, and it's only partial storage for the amount of power we use every day. So if we wanted to cover all the power we use every day, we'd probably have to have 3 or 4 of these Powerwalls, and they are gangable. So,
Okay.
so I think you can gang up to 10.
Oh, wow.
But, that's a lot of money.
Yes, it is.
So not many people go that far. So it's important to think about, what do I need to really survive a blackout? And the big advantage of this is it's to survive one day
Sure.
of blackout, because each day you can recharge it and generate some more from the sun.
During the day, right,
During
with
the
your
day.
solar panels.
So that's a great asset. So we went through all of our circuits in the household, and I said, well, we need lights. Not every light, but some lights. We're fortunate that we have almost entirely LEDs in our home, so that's a very small draw. We want the refrigerator.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a big draw either. We want television and computers. Those are pretty small draws. We thought about, and we have a holding tank and a sewage injector,
That's essential.
ejector pump in the
essential.
basement.
Mm-hmm.
And so we wanted to have that be able to run, so we wouldn't have to be going elsewhere for bathroom functions.
Right.
So we looked at all those things. So those are the ones that we said bare minimum.
Right.
And so we kind of sized it for that. But we said, some people will say, okay, I want you to be able to shift off all the other circuits I don't want when there's a blackout, so that we are not tempted. I said, we know enough about how our house works, so
Mm-hmm.
you can leave them all on, but we'll just use those, and we rated the battery size to be able to run those. We have a magnetic induction cooker, which draws a lot of power. We have a microwave, draws a lot of power. Motors, things like our ejector pump draws more power than at startup, and same thing for well pumps and things like that. So if we actually had an analysis done by the company installing this, to say, yes, it can handle the startup of your ejector pump. Once it's started up, then the draw goes down.
I see.
So you need to look at all those factors. We will not be doing cooking on our magnetic induction or our convection oven when there's a blackout, because that would drain our battery very rapidly, and we wouldn't have anything for lights or.
And that wasn't considered in the equation for sizing it originally.
We said we're willing to not do that.
Okay.
You might want to know, what are we going to do for cooking?
I do.
So we have a little Coleman camp stove with some canisters, and we can put that on our deck and cook whatever we need on that.
It's a great way
for a few
around
days,
it.
that's not bad.
Just because this battery backup system is a Tesla brand, that does not mean you need to own a Tesla car in order to take advantage, right?
Absolutely not.
They're different systems that are looking to be integrated into one another in the future.
Well, it's being studied, a lot of experimentation going on it, but it's not there yet. And for a long time, I thought that would be great, because the batteries in the cars are much bigger than the capacity of this battery.
Right.
But I'm not sure they're going to be able to work that out. Maybe some genius will come up with it.
I'm sure he will, or she.
But you can charge a Tesla car off of the system, but you have to have a charging station, just like you have 3 of them at the office. We'd have to have one of those here, and then it could draw on our solar array, it could draw on our battery, or on the grid.
What are some of the environmental benefits of having a battery storage system in your house?
Well, leveling off demand is a big one, because that means that you need you being Southern California Edison in this case, the utility, needs fewer peaker plants. Peaker plants are natural gas plants that are designed just for peak hours. So they don't run very many hours in a day or even in a week. And they're considered quite dirty, because the startup produces more pollutants than once they're running. So this kind of a thing that evens off the loads for Southern California Edison means fewer peaker plants are needed. In fact, one of the victories we environmentalists had in the last couple of years was down in Oxnard. 3 of the existing natural gas plants were taken offline, shut down. It's still, that closeout is still happening, and they were going to add another peaker plant specifically that they ended up not doing, and they're counting on this kind of thing to take the place of those.
Fantastic.
Where more residential solar arrays and bigger scale arrays and grid storage batteries and home storage.
They all play a part in that.
And they're saying we're probably not going to need those peaker plants. So that's a real boon for communities, especially some of them are located near schools, and the pollution of those is not good for kids. So that's a big plus. Another thing that is a bit looking into the future, but these are lithium-ion battery things, just like they are in the Tesla cars.
Sure.
And lithium is almost entirely imported to the U.S. from countries all over the world. Many of them in Africa, some of them in China even. And the mining has a very intense carbon footprint. It's environmentally damaged in almost all cases. It pollutes rivers, it pollutes groundwater. So it's a questionable thing that we want to be doing to get to clean energy.
Sure.
Not the lithium ion so much as where it's coming from in the process for how we're getting it now. And the agreement is worked out and is starting to be implemented in California near the Salton Sea. The Salton Sea has a lot of deep subterranean brine water that they're going to start bringing up for power generation. It'll be a geothermal type of power generation. could play a significant role in power production for California.
Okay.
And it will be clean power because it's all within pipes that are brought up from deep down, and as soon as they're used, it's fed back into the enormous cavity. And the amount of brine underground near the Salton Sea is epic in proportions to almost anywhere else. Well, interestingly, some of this brine has lithium alkali in it.
Interesting.
So they can pull that out and use that in the process of making these batteries. Well, that's a totally green process.
You're kind of killing two birds with one stone in that process.
And one of the reasons they haven't done the geothermal generation is it's more expensive. Well, when you put these two together, getting the lithium local in our country as well as clean, boy, you're hitting three home runs in a row.
Fantastic.
So that's coming, and that's gonna, and the amount of alkali in this brine can produce 10 times the amount of batteries we're now producing easily for years and years into the future. It's enormous quantities. So I'm kind of hopeful that'll be online for the batteries in the next year or two.
And the more people that adopt this technology, the better that proposition looks.
The economics look better all the time, yeah.
Right.
So that's kind of an exciting thing to help offset the one drawback that I've felt about lithium-ion batteries. And that's not the only kind of battery. There's a lot of research going on in batteries. There's the lithium-ion cobalt battery, which is some people think is a cleaner battery. It's had less of the issue that was early on with the lithium-ion batteries, which were fire, high temperatures, and possible almost spontaneous combustion of some of the batteries.
Really?
So that's no longer an issue, but the cobalt batteries have never had that issue. And there's other good outfits other than Tesla. Enphase is one, Sonnen, a German-made one, and there's a lot of them. I don't even know all the brand names, but there's advantages and disadvantages to all of them. The two I just mentioned both have smaller battery packs, but they're gangable, so you have more flexibility on what you want to create as a assemblage of batteries.
Makes sense.
But they have longer lives, but they are much more expensive per kilowatt hour of capacity.
Sure, that's just a trade-off.
So one of the reasons most people are going with the Powerwalls is that they're the most reasonably priced at this point.
Understood. Well, thank you very much, Dennis, for talking to me today and sharing your knowledge of your battery backup system. I definitely learned a lot. I appreciate your time, and best of luck to you and your system in the future.
Well, thank you. I hope you'll be using this information to talk to a lot of your prospective clients at Allen Construction that are wanting to put solar on their roofs. To put the whole package together is a good deal.
Well, we get a lot of questions, so I certainly will.
Yeah, good.
Thanks again.